Take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you're having a great summer so far. My name is David Medina, and I'm the co-founder and COO of Results for America. And it is our honor to be co-hosting today's session with our partners, the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Bloomberg Philanthropies. And today we'll be focusing on the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. This is a $1.25 billion grant program that's designed to help community initiatives that are helping to ensure that everyone has equitable access and the skills needed to fully participate in our digital world. The National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA, at the U.S. Commerce Department will be accepting applications for this program through September 23rd, 2024. NTIA expects to award around 150 to 200 grants of about $5 million to $12 million each. Grants will be announced beginning as early as this winter, but no later than April of next year. And so our session today is designed to help you develop the strongest application possible for these funds. As always, we want this to be an interactive session, so please post any questions or comments you may have, and we will share them with our friends from the Commerce Department for them to review and incorporate in their FAQs, which they're issuing on a regular basis on their websites. I'm now pleased to welcome our first speakers who are here today to describe the goals of the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program and a few tips on how to make your applications competitive. First, Assistant Secretary Alan Davidson, as well as NTIA Digital Equity Director Angie Thie Bennett. Thanks for joining us today, Alan and Angie. The Zoom is yours.
Thank you so much, David, for the introduction, and thanks to the local infrastructure hub for hosting us today. And a special thanks to all our partners at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, for your continued commitment to helping NTIA and all of us here in the federal government spread the gospel of the Internet for All initiative that we're now undertaking. We're glad to be here because we really want as many cities, towns, counties as possible to have the opportunity to receive our Internet for All funding. And honestly, programs like the Local Infrastructure Hub are filling an important need from our perspective by helping local governments like all of you on the call build that capacity to compete for this, what we hope will be really transformative infrastructure funding. So thanks everybody for joining us today and for your commitment to digital equity and digital opportunity. We're here today broadly because, as you all know, the Internet is now the essential tool for communications in our modern digital world. It's essential for access to work, access to education, access to healthcare, access to justice. And here we are still in 2024, and millions of people across America still lack access to a high-speed internet connection, or lack the means or the tools or the skills to use it. That is about to change. We've been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 25 years. But thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, thanks to the leadership of the Biden-Harris administration, we now have the resources to do something really serious about it. The president's given us a very simple but ambitious mission, and that is to connect everyone in America, and we do mean everyone, to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service. And it goes beyond that. That's just the start, because a connection alone, we know, is not enough. Americans also need devices, they need skills, they need the know-how to be able to thrive online, which is what we ultimately are seeking. To that end, just last week, NTIA announced the launch of our Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program, the program we're here to talk about today. The notice of funding opportunity that we released makes available $910 million, nearly $1 billion, to support projects that are going to help people obtain skills and technology that they need to reap the full benefits of our digital economy. These programs are designed to support a range of what we call covered populations under the law. So that they include programs to support veterans, seniors, low-income Americans, people with disabilities, minority communities, rural communities. So there's a broad set of communities that are really being addressed under this law. It's also a program that is widely available to a broad cross-section of folks who can apply for it. And that includes local and state governments, local governments. So what does it look like? It's going to depend a lot on the needs of your community. For some, that could mean providing veterans with laptops or hotspots. It could mean helping an aging population learn how to visit a doctor from the comfort of their home using telehealth. It could mean helping a family farmer use new or evolving technologies to better manage their crops. It could help mean making sure that a child living near the poverty line has a tablet to do their homework. Broadly, these are programs that seek to empower people to fully engage in this digital economy. I will say we've been making a lot of progress on this digital equity agenda so far. For the first time in history, every state and territory in the country has a digital equity plan. That's the first time we've ever had that. We have a set of state and territory grants. That's our digital equity capacity grant program. And many states are out there now working on how they're going to make those funds available. So that's going to be another area of opportunity for local government. In this competitive grant program, we're looking, as I said, at a broader range of applicants, right? So it's not just the states who we just gave money to in the capacity grant program. And again, it can include city and county governments, as well as nonprofits, native entities, workforce development programs. There's a broad list. It's at NTIA.gov, but I just give you that sense because we want to give you a feel for who else is going to be applying for this funding. A few quick words on how to best prepare. And I'll just say these really fast. I think that a lot of this is stuff you'll know, and Angie will talk about the specifics a little bit more. Couple of words of advice, really, like we are looking for real world solutions to real world problems. So focusing on the specific needs of your communities is going to be really important for us. A second thing is we've encouraged people to consider partnerships, including that might be for you folks, regional partnerships or working with nonprofits. The point is we know it's a real burden to do these federal funding programs. Even putting applications together for grants can be hard for a lot of folks. And so we're trying to encourage people to work with each other, especially working with entities who've had some experience doing federal grant applications. Last thing I'll say is, and I'm sure you know, like, don't wait till the last minute to apply. This is going to be a very competitive program. We're expecting it to be a very competitive program. Hate for people to lose out by not hitting our deadlines. So I'll just conclude by saying, from our perspective, this is really a historic moment and a historic opportunity that's really part of something much bigger that's happening across the country. We think of this as a movement that's growing to connect everyone and to close the digital divide. And it's a movement that it's happening now. It's happening on the sides of roads where cable and conduit is being laid. It's happening on factory floors where workers here in America are building fiber optic cable and network equipment that's going to be used to build these networks. And it's happening in community centers and senior centers with church groups and veterans groups. It's happening in libraries and town halls and city centers across the country where people are teaching digital skills and sharing digital tools. And all of you are now part of this movement to connect everyone in America. And because of that growing movement, I am really convinced, we are convinced here that we are going to look back 10 years from now or 20 years from now and say, this was the moment that our generation stepped up and made sure that we closed this digital divide. It's going to take a lot of work. We need everybody to do their part. And that's why we're so excited to be here with you all today, thinking about how you can participate in these grant making programs, because I know that working together, we really can make this idea of the internet for all a reality at last. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your interest. And I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker.
All right, thanks a lot, Alan, and greetings, everyone. My name is Angela Thee Bennett, and I serve as the Digital Equity Director under the United States Department of Commerce's National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA. My pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to join you all today and provide you with an overview of our Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. Next slide, please. But before we jump in, I wanted just to take a step back and give a quick overview of all of our programs to and then, we'll focus on the digital equity. So under the bipartisan infrastructure law, Congress allocated $48 billion to NTIA to ensure that every household is not only connected to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet, but the skills and the resources they need in order to meaningfully utilize them. The first being the BEAD, which is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which is the $42.45 billion to provide that last mile connections to the household, which is that first priority. The second is to ensure that community anchor institutions have at least a gig of service. And then the third, if the states have any funding available, they can utilize that funding for non-deployment uses or digital equity uses. Today's focus will be on the Digital Equity Program, which is a $2.75 billion. We were also allocated the $2 billion for the Tribal Broadband Program to help tribal communities not only get access, but also meaningfully use the internet. And then our $1 billion of the Middle Mile Program. Next slide, please. Under the Digital Equity Act, we have 3 grant programs which are sequential. The first being the State Planning Grant Program, where states provided $60 million for states and territories to develop their digital equity plans. Once the states developed the plans, they were able to then apply to our State Capacity Grant Program, which is the $1.44 billion. NTIA made more than $800 million of that $1.44 billion available in March. And all states and territories have applied to our State Capacity Grant Program to implement the digital equity plans they developed during the state planning grant process. We just launched last week the competitive grant program, which is the $1.25 billion, which is open to a broader group of eligible entities other than the states who received funding under the Planning and Capacity Grant Program. Across all 3 of our programs, we do have a set-aside, a 1% set-aside for territories, and a 5% set-aside for Native entities, which includes our Indian tribes, our Alaska Native entities, and our Native Hawaiian organizations. Next slide, please. Under all 3 of our programs, we have 8 covered populations. We have the low-income households, people with disabilities, our aging population, age 60 and over, our rural inhabitants, people with language barriers, which includes individuals with low literacy or our English language learners, incarcerated individuals other than those that are in a federal correctional institution, that is statutory, racial and ethnic minorities, as well as our veterans. We also recognize that an individual can have multiple identities and belong to more than one covered population. So for instance, you can be a low-income person with disabilities that live, in a rural area, recognizing that, as you identify with more than one covered population, it also exacerbates the barriers that you have to overcome in order to be able to fully participate in our digital economy and society. Next slide, please. I also have this slide, and Alan touched on it. We under the capacity grant program, that grant program was allocated specifically for the states, but we also provided you with these tentative allocations because it's also an opportunity for local communities to apply to their states for capacity grant funding as states are moving towards implementing their state digital equity plans. Next slide. Next slide. So for the topic for today, we will focus on the competitive grant program, which is open to political subdivisions, tribal entities, nonprofit organizations, community anchor institutions, local educational agencies, and workforce development organizations. I will note that state agencies are also eligible under the competitive grant program. However, that state agency could not have served as the administering entity for either the planning or the capacity grant program. Next slide, please. So during today's presentation, what I will delve into is who's eligible for the grant, what activities are allowable, what are the award ranges, what resources are available for potential applicants, and what are key dates to remember. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of the competitive grant program? It's to help us achieve digital equity, promote digital inclusion activities, and spur greater adoption of broadband among covered populations. So what does this mean? It's ensuring that people have not only the access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet, but the internet-enabled devices that meets their needs, recognizing that one type of device will not meet the needs of all individuals. And then also providing them with access to the skills and the resources they need to improve their access to healthcare, improve their ability to engage civic and socially, improve our learners of all ages, improve their access to a quality education, and ensure that communities are able to fully access the benefits of the internet access, as well as promoting the economic stability through workforce development and employment opportunities for our individuals and communities. Next slide, please. So I touched on this earlier of who's eligible to apply. And so political subdivisions, agencies of the states, instrumentalities of the states are eligible to apply, which can include your adult education agencies or those that provide public housing. I know that's also a question for individuals. Our native entities, which includes, we collectively refer to Indian tribes, Alaska Native entities, and Native Hawaiian organizations, as native entities. Foundations, corporations, institutions, or associations that are not for profit and they cannot be a school. Community anchor institutions, local education agencies, any entity that carries out a workforce development program, or a partnership between any of the entities that I've just described. So under the competitive grant program, Native entities are eligible to apply under the general pool as well as the set aside. However, U.S. territories the government is only eligible to apply for the territory set aside. However, it doesn't preclude organizations within that territory from applying under the general applicant pool of eligible applicants. Next slide, please. What are the allowable activities? And so under the statute, there are 5 key allowable activities that applicants can apply for funding to support, at least one of them. Digital inclusion activities that benefit at least one or more of the covered populations to, help facilitate the adoption of broadband, by providing educational and employment opportunities to those covered populations. So it's not enough to just get them access, but how are they meaningfully using the access to the internet? Upgrading public computing centers, to construct, upgrade, expand, or operate new or existing public computing centers for the benefit of our covered populations through community anchor institutions. In the NOFO, there is a definition of community anchor institutions as well. They can, apply to implement training programs, whether it's for workforce development, for healthcare, any training program that will ensure that individuals have the digital skills from basic to advanced that they need in order to meaningfully use the internet, to make equipment available at low or no cost for our covered populations, recognizing that that there's not the one device that will meet all needs, that depending on the covered population that you are serving, they may need a laptop, or if it's a person with disabilities, they may need different devices in order to be able to meaningfully use the internet. And finally, there's another category that, in the spirit of innovative approaches that transcend existing digital equity programs, applicants may also propose a project or activity that the Assistant Secretary finds to be consistent with the purpose of this. So if there isn't one of these 5, you can propose an activity for the Assistant Secretary to consider as an allowable activity. Next slide, please. Under the competitive grant program, I've touched on the covered populations, but so within the statute, so these covered populations are defined by statute. And just also recognizing that within each of these covered populations, not only are there intersectionality, but there may be subgroups within the covered populations. So for instance, states in their digital equity plans included youth as a subgroup. They, of this, because youth actually fall within 7 out of the, 8 covered populations. LGBTQ communities are unhoused, population as subgroups as well. Next slide, please. So on the, I mentioned the set aside for the Native entities. So Native entities are eligible in the general are eligible to apply in the general pool, but there is a 5% set aside for Native entities as well, which includes, $37.5 million for Native entities. And if the fiscal year 2025 funds become available, it will, in that 37.5 million will increase to $50 million. So for those entities on this call that have Native entities within their areas, that there is this set aside for your Indian tribes, Alaska Native entities, and Native Hawaiian organizations. And the application deadline for the Native entities is the general application pool of September 23rd, 2024. Next slide, please. I touched on earlier the set aside for the territories. Territories can only, the territorial government can only apply for the set aside. And so there's $7.5 million available for them. And then if the fiscal year 2025 funds become available, it will increase to $10 million. The minimum award for territories is $1 million, and it will not, no individual award will exceed $2.5 million. Unlike the general pool, as well as the Native entities, the territories application deadline is October 22nd, 2024. So I really just want to emphasize to folks, that is the deadline for the territory governments only. Everyone else's deadline is September 23rd, 2024, 11:59 p.m. Eastern on September 23rd, 2024. Next slide, please. What are the award ranges? The award ranges will be between $5 and $12 million. if you would like, if an applicant would like to apply for an amount less than the 5 million or in excess of the 12 million, they can apply for that, but they will need to provide a justification as to why that application falls either below or above this range. As Alan said, we do encourage partnerships. We are stronger together. Having strong partnerships also enables those, smaller organizations that may not have the federal grant capacity to be able to participate in this funding opportunity. To ensure that we are reaching the covered populations that this program is designed to serve. And if there are any remaining funds, we will issue additional NOFOs to make available those remaining funds. There is a cost sharing, a matching requirement under this. So there is a 10% match requirement that can either be met from cash or in kind. Applications that exceed the match will be provided additional consideration during the review process. And if any applicant is seeking a waiver of the 10% match, they must submit that request with a justification of that waiver at the time of application. Next slide, please. And here's a slide on key resources. And I saw in the chat resources that were dropped in. So if you go to our Broadband USA site, we have technical assistance resources available. We have Get Ready one-pagers. In order to, access the application portal, once it becomes open, you must be registered with sam.gov and have a UEI in order to even access our application portal. We have webinars. We had a webinar last Thursday. The slide deck, as well as recording of that webinar, is made available on our website, and we have announced additional webinars that we are hosting to provide resources to applicants, to help them with this application process. And as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please submit them to our digitalequity@ntia.gov inbox. We are publishing, additional FAQs on a regular basis throughout this application window. And that concludes it. And thank you so much for your interest in our program and all of your commitment and hard work to serving our individuals and closing this digital divide.
Great. Director Thee Bennett, thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks to Assistant Secretary Davidson for coming and telling us a little bit more about this program. As you can see, there are lots of interest out there, lots of questions. As Director Thee Bennett just said, please post any questions either on our chat here today or directly to NTIA, and they will review those and incorporate them into the FAQ documents moving forward. They need to be publicly transparent to all communities all across the country, and that's how they do that. I would now like to highlight a couple of documents that are on our website that should hopefully help you all through this process. First, again, I just want to point out in the chat that Jamie from Bloomberg Philanthropies and Robert Williams from NTIA have also included links to all of the NTIA NOFOs, FAQs, and resources for the program that we're talking about today. So check those places out. You can also find links to those same resources on our website, localinfrastructure.org. Secondly, we have a document on our website that summarizes winning strategies to help you craft a strong digital equity competitive grant application. So please take a look at our website, and you'll see what other communities have done in the past and all across the country. And our website also features case studies on Mesa, Arizona, and Waterloo, Iowa, two cities that are expanding access to high-speed internet access all across their communities. And again, you can find all of these resources on our website, localinfrastructure.org. And so now I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Amy Huffman, who is the Policy Director at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, who will moderate our policy panel. So thanks for joining us today. Amy, over to you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today, and thank you to the Infrastructure Hub and all of the partners for having me. As David said, I'm Amy Huffman. I'm the Policy Director for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Our acronym is one letter different than the speakers you just heard from the federal government, but we are not the federal government. We're a national nonprofit. We represent over 1,700 small community-based organizations and local governments and libraries and folks around the country doing digital inclusion work day in and day out. And I'm really pleased to be here with a rock star panel today of folks who are knee deep in doing digital inclusion work in their communities. And I've had the pleasure to witness some of the work firsthand. First, we have Mayor Frank Scott Jr. of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm not sure if he's here yet. If he is, we'll pop him on. Rachel Stark from the city of Charlotte. She's the Smart Cities Program Manager. And our friend Rebecca Kama from the County of Los Angeles. She's the Director of Digital Equity. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We're excited to be here. So I think we'll give Mayor Frank Scott a couple minutes to join, but we'll go ahead and get started. Rachel and Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about your community's digital equity goals and your current community-based digital equity efforts? Rachel, we'll start with you.
Sure thing. So we just a little bit of context with Charlotte. We're a very urbanized area. And so some of the things like just having fiber, supposedly we're fully covered, but it's a completely different picture when you think about affordability and availability of that fiber for the everyday citizen resident living on off the streets in Charlotte. So we've been focused a little bit on getting internet options to different people that are affordable. We are really lucky in that we have some really great partners through the Center for Digital Equity, which Amy knows a lot about and participates on when she can. But yeah, we have a lot of these resources. But as the Assistant Secretary said, it's not just about internet connection. It's also about making sure there's digital literacy and access to devices out there. And we look at it a step further here in the city of Charlotte as well. We want to make sure people aren't just getting internet connection, but are they really benefiting from these connections? Are we closing the gap, not just of digital divide, not just in terms of these resources being available, but are people really benefiting from it? And that feeds to our larger our mayor's racial equity initiative and some of the work that we're doing to close the upward mobility gap in the city of Charlotte. And so with this, we've had CARES and ARPA funds to really help us along the way. Our work right now, we have a program called Access Charlotte that helps people in working with our partners who provide affordable housing, get internet to their residents, to all their residents. We also have a program through Queen's University and the Center for Digital Equity to provide digital navigation support to really help onboard people and support them in technical issues and getting other things that they need besides the internet access through the digital navigation program. And then we also have been piloting some work around basically digital literacy, and after people complete digital literacy courses, getting devices. So using the learn to earn model and really getting folks the support in terms of education, as well as the devices that they need to continue building those skill sets and using that connectivity to benefit. We've also been exploring connecting youth to these resources, so exposing them also to technology fields and technology mentors in career choices in their future, and supporting the families as we do it. So that's our UN Tuck Charlotte work, which is a summer camp, but also we're looking potentially expanding it from summer camps to being more. And thank you to the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Comcast for providing a recent small grant to help us advance that work. We also are looking at even just the resources we provide. Are we providing our digital resources in a way that saves people time? Because time is money. And so if we have a lot of resources available to the community, but they have to fill out multiple applications and repeat their data entries over and over again. We're really putting a strain on folks. So we're exploring a tool called Civiform as a way to really model how can we really reduce that strain on people's times, as well as producing an educational series and some work around just data transparency and us being more robust in our work around what is it the technology does and how can people access and benefit from the data from public-facing technology.
That's wonderful, Rachel. If it sounds like a lot, that's because it is. I've had the pleasure to witness Charlotte's work in this area grow over the years, and there's so many different pieces and different partners that you all have really leveraged. Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the goals of the County of Los Angeles and your current community-based digital inclusion and digital equity efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction. And again, my name is Rebecca Kaluma. I'm actually the first ever Director of Digital Equity for the County of Los Angeles. I have been in this role for almost a year. It'll be my 1-year anniversary officially tomorrow. And I do want to say that I've hit the ground running, and the County of Los Angeles, first and foremost, is the most populous county in the entire country. So I do have my work cut out ahead of me, but I do want to mention that the county is involved in a lot of digital equity efforts through our Delete the Divide team, as well as implementing community broadband network initiatives. But for the purpose of today, I just wanted to go ahead and spotlight the work that we're doing through our Intergovernmental Broadband Coordinating Committee. So about 2 years ago, the County of Los Angeles approved a board motion to officially establish my role and also a committee. And through this committee, our role and our job is to ensure that we're working closely with a variety of different entities, such as local jurisdictions, nonprofit organizations, pretty much every single type of organization that needs to be part of the solution to be able to address the digital divide. And our primary goal through this committee is to first and foremost work closely with community members, but to ultimately pursue, secure, and implement federal and state grant funding across the entire county. So we started officially convening back in April of this year. And through the convenings that we're having through the IBCC, we have established several working groups that are literally spread out all throughout the county and are sub-region based, and one is regional based. And our goal is to ensure that all of our IBCC members, which include cities, nonprofit organizations, councils of government, and organizations, are ultimately being set up for success to be able to apply and implement this federal grant funding. So what we've been doing over the past few months is first and foremost establishing proof of concepts that outline key activities that we want to implement with the federal funding. We've also been collaborating together and strategizing on what implementation and evaluation should look like, and really making sure that we're understanding what those key grant program requirements, compliance, and all guidance is to ensure that we're setting ourselves up for success. So part of my work has been preparing all of our IBCC members before the notice of funding opportunity was released, and ensuring that we had what we need to have a successful regional model where the county is serving as the authorized representative for the grant funding, and then we'll be sub-granting with all of our various cities and organizations. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of work, but we're very excited that we're helping to build the capacity and providing training, resources, and technical assistance for some of our smaller cities, as well as smaller organizations that perhaps haven't done digital equity programming before, but would like to embark on this journey with this unprecedented amount of funding.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think a couple of things that you both brought up that I want to tease out a little bit is partnerships. You know, we heard the Assistant Secretary and Angie highlight the need for those partnerships. And Rebecca's here. Yes, we know this is U.S. Council of Mayors, and most of you are from municipalities or towns or cities, but you partner with your counties often, right? I hope so. And this is definitely one of those times where we encourage you all to really lean into those partnerships and to work together collectively, because as Angie and Secretary Davidson noted, there's not a lot of funding, and you know we need this to stretch. So could you two talk a bit about the partnerships that you're developing, and how you partner, say, with nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations. And also, both of you have done some really beautiful work around co-creating solutions with the community itself. And so if you could talk a little bit about all of those things.
I'll jump in. We've partnered with the Center for Digital Equity. So we're really lucky in having this nonprofit organization based out of Queen's University here at Charlotte. So their work really started around 10 years ago when we had the Raj Chetty study came out listing out barriers to upward economic mobility. And Charlotte was 50 out of the 50 largest cities in terms of upward economic mobility, which really lit the fire in not just government, but also like our nonprofits and funders and philanthropy groups and even our big corporations, banking industry, to really do something different. And so about 10 years ago, the CD, which at the time was called the, I think it was like the Center for Digital Inclusion here at the city of Charlotte, really did some work to build up some initial partnerships, and they're continuing to do that work. And they really have built up their work as a backbone organization, pulling everyone together. And so that has it looks a couple of different ways, but one thing that they do is having a collective meeting that pulls in different entities to have conversations at least once a month, as well as reporting on our collective impact report, which actually just came out last week. So if anyone wants to check that out at the CD's website, that helps point that out. And with the city, we're in comparison to them specifically, we only recently got, like Rebecca, relatively recently got funded to have this role and to have this initiative and have funding even going towards this specific work. So in compared to the CD from 10 years ago, we're a lot newer to the game, but we have part of the reason this is funded is because it was advocated for from the CD. And so we work very closely with them. We also have really benefited from having the mayor really focused in on like how do we advance our racial equity initiative that she has started. And we sometimes it's work through the CDE and sometimes it's work directly with our partners, whether it's the library system, it's some of the local community-based organizations that serve specific covered populations that were listed earlier, workforce groups, those sorts of entities. We do some one-off conversations and support just to figure out like how can we even like work with workforce, how can we really advance digital literacy in the workforce space has been really key to have those conversations because it's something that other entities may have done more of, and they understand what are some of the barriers to participation that we can help lend a hand. And like Rebecca was saying, proof of concepts sometimes are needed to prove like we can do things differently, we can do things more holistically and collaboratively to advance the work. So that's kind of like how we've leaned in is working through our partners at Queen's University and the Center for Digital Equity.
All right, I'll go ahead and jump in, and I definitely echo everything that Rachel has shared. I would say similar to what you mentioned as well, Rachel, collective impact needs to be at the center of everybody's work here. And for those of you guys who don't know what collective impact is, it's a model that pretty much focuses on bringing various stakeholders together as well as the community, and it pretty much emphasizes the fact that solving one social issue is not the responsibility of one entity alone. So for example, although the county is serving as that backbone organization, we need every single organization, city, entity at the table to help us address and solve the digital divide. So we want to work closely with trusted organizations that have relationships and credibility in the community, especially with those being able to reach covered populations. So that is something that we're continuing to uplift, and also something that I've taken through best practices in my former entity with the city of Long Beach. So working with those trusted organizations that can be those trusted messengers in the community. In addition to that, I would say as you're building these partnerships, it's also important to understand what key best practices and assets they bring to the table as well that can help uplift your overall strategy for advancing digital equity. So for example, we're working closely with Everyone On in Human IT, and both of those organizations do all things digital equity, and they have agreed to work together to support all of our IBCC members with implementing and evaluating digital inclusion activities. So being able to leverage those key partners that are already doing great work within your digital equity ecosystem, I think is also very imperative. And I would also say leveraging your non-traditional partners. I would say we have typical partners that we want to work with in this space, but there are a lot of great organizations that are doing wraparound services where you could easily align digital equity with it. So for example, if you know an organization that's doing parent engagement, how can you work with them to tie in a digital equity activity in alignment with that? If you know an organization that's doing English as a second language classes, how can you align digital equity? So I think this opportunity is very exciting for us because we can literally get creative with who we want to work with, who's already doing great work, and just aligning digital equity with that. And then in terms of partnerships, it's also very important for you to establish roles and responsibilities. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. So in our partnership, we have established the county, as I said, as the backbone, and then we are in the process of working closely with our organizations that will serve as the sub-recipients of the grant funding and then providing, you know, a scope of work that aligns with that. So everybody needs to know what their role is so that way we know how to work together to ensure that we have community impact.
And there's a responsibility on the primary applicant or grant recipient's behalf too, to provide, I think they're called scope, and it's not a scope of work, but some sort of document to NTIA saying that they'll abide by certain things in their relationship.
Letter of commitment.
Letter of commitment. Thank you, Rebecca. Yes.
It's on my to-do list for today. That's why I know this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think let's get let's get a little tactical here and a little specific. So both of you have been preparing for this for some time, but stepping back for folks in the room who maybe have not been preparing for this for the last year or 10 years, what are the first things that they can do to get started? And I really want to stress that I personally don't want anyone not to apply because they feel like they have a lack of capacity or just don't feel ready. This is the moment, and there's only 60 days in counting to do so. So yes, it's a lot of work, but yes, you can still do it, right? So what would y'all's advice be for those folks in the room that are a little, what should I do? How do I get started? Rebecca, we start with you.
Yeah, I can start us off. Thank you. First and foremost, I would say, and I'm going to provide some of my best practices that I also took from NDIA. So kudos to them and their team for helping to prepare everyone. But I would say make sure to get as much information as you can to be informed. So sign up for all of the NTIA technical assistance webinars. I believe they are a total of 6 of them. Make sure that you stay informed and join spaces like this where you can get additional information. So I know NDIA is hosting one on Friday, so definitely join that one. Some other best practices that we've been doing in terms of grant application preparation, I would say continuing to build strong relationships with the funding entities, whether it's federal or state, and making sure that they're aware of the different activities that you would like to do. In addition to that, we also administered a funding assessment and planning form. We administered this a few months ago, and this allowed me as the authorized representative to see what key activities our subrecipients would like to implement, what key digital inclusion barriers, challenges and gaps will they be addressing, what expertise and experience and strengths can they bring to the table, what current activities are they already doing that we should be able to uplift as part of the work that we would like to do with this grant funding. In addition to that, what covered populations are they able to reach and serve, the number in terms of that, and then also what is their budget. So we wanted to assess this work and then also making sure that we're scaling on existing efforts as well. In addition to that, it's important to also, as I mentioned already, define roles and responsibilities. So figure out who's going to be that authorized representative and then who will be the subrecipients for grant funding. And in addition to that, we've also been reviewing our state digital equity plan. So this plan also has key strategies that we're hoping and we'll make sure to align with the federal grant funding. So making sure that we're uplifting existing strategies that the state would like to implement and really making sure that we're focusing on those priority outcome areas. In addition to that, we want to make sure that our approach is cross sectional and intersectional across all different issue areas. So we're finding creative ways to align digital equity with like housing, civic engagement, healthcare, education, and really making sure that this will have a multi-systems change effort in the work that we're doing. And I would say, last but not least, is feel free to connect with anybody that's doing digital equity. I've found that the digital equity community is extremely uplifting. And if you have a question, somebody most likely has an answer for it. And I've been able to get a lot of great resources and questions answered through the NDIA listserv. So definitely feel free to join those spaces. And if you're looking for a template on how to create a letter of commitment, I'm sure somebody has one. And even I've received best practices on different things to prepare for this grant program. So definitely reach out, and people are here to ensure that we're all a success in this once in a lifetime opportunity for grant funding.
I mean, I feel like Rebecca covered it all really well there, honestly. And I don't need to add into it. I think the only thing that is key is like start having those conversations with those partners soon to build up like if you don't know exactly what they're doing and some of those numbers and being able to answer some of those questions. Like I love that, like this is something we haven't done, but I just took notes on it what Rebecca was saying in terms of getting that idea of like subrecipients, like what is it? Not only that they do, but numbers that they serve. So that's really great. And I think having those conversations early on is key. And also like something that you touched on a little bit too, Rebecca, is like tapping into creative connections around people we might already have an opportunity with. Like for instance, our housing group, which you also mentioned, we have these opportunities with a lot of these affordable housing providers that we already fund to have conversations around what have you been doing? And we're lucky enough in the city of Charlotte where we've been working on this work collaboratively for Access Charlotte specifically. And so we have some partners we can pull in to say, okay, sustainably beyond ARPA, how are we going to continue to provide affordable, accessible / free internet to all of your residents? And so having those relationships and leveraging and finding those creative opportunities of things that might already be happening within your city or county is really key.
Great advice. Those are really great words of wisdom. So only thing I would add is to read the notice of funding opportunity word for word, front to back, a couple times. It's going to be important to understand it in order to apply. And to begin having conversations with potential funders who can provide a match. Yes, you can have an in-kind match, but the applicants that provide 20% or 30% match will get additional points on their application and therefore be more competitive. So going ahead and having those conversations would behoove you. And if you're looking around and you're like, who can I join? Who might be a good prime for this grant? You might want to turn that finger back on yourself. You're probably it. You're probably the organization that should be a prime and then should be gathering sub applicants. So encourage you to think about applying. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Jamie and Jamie, and they're going to take it from here. Thank you so much for having us and to these wonderful panelists.
Thank you so much, Amy and Rachel and Rebecca, for all of your wisdom. I feel like I know a lot of cities came onto the call and felt really daunted by the challenge of putting in an application in less than 2 months, and the guidance that you provided and just the pathways to partnering, which is such a great avenue and something that we heard from NTIA is really going to be what they're looking for in applications is really good advice. And just wanted to, on behalf of Mayor Scott of Little Rock, who unfortunately got pulled away from joining us. We'll have them in a future session, but I know that they're doing great work in Little Rock on digital equity, and we'll share that with you on the website. I wanted to just preview an opportunity that we have to go a little deeper on digital equity. We know that especially for communities of 150,000 or less, this feels really, really daunting, and you may not have the capacity needed to put that application together and could use some help. And so, and we can put up the slide, we're going to be having a follow-on workshop on August 14th, and I'll share the link to register for that in the chat, where we'll go a little deeper on what are those strategies that you need, and try to really surface for, especially for some smaller communities, what are those ways to form that partnership. And then we're also offering one-on-one technical assistance office hours, which will be supported by our partners at HRNA. They were our partners on our digital equity and broadband boot camp, and they're coming back to make sure that if as you're working through your applications, maybe you're getting stuck on something, you have the support that you need. So we're going to launch a poll now. In the poll, we're going to ask you how you're doing in this space, and then you'll see that one of our questions also asks if you could use this kind of support. So please let us know if this is something you're interested in, then we can follow up with you on that opportunity. And with that, I'd like to just invite Danny Fuchs from HRNA just spend a minute or two just talking about the kinds of things that they'll be able to help you with during those office hours. Danny?
Thank you so much, Jamie. We're really excited first about the application planning workshop, where we'll go through the application and how it is that you can go about completing that to your greatest advantage of securing a competitive application. We'll also take Q&A during that workshop, but then afterwards in one-on-one technical assistance, we'll be available to walk through any questions you have about completing the application, to talk about program designs and ways that you can get some of the additional points that NTIA is offering in the NOFO for multiplier points. How you might think through some partnerships that would increase your likelihood of being funded, as well as things like local match and evaluation. So we fortunately have a team of about 12+ people that are currently working on a series of these applications. We're attending all of the webinars that have been mentioned here and are ready, willing, eager, and able to support any city of 150,000 or less through this generosity of the local infrastructure hub to provide that technical assistance.
Great. Thank you, Danny. And just wanted to also remind folks, if you are a community of 150,000 or less, we have our grant application assistance boot camps. Our next cycle is starting in September. We're going to be supporting 4 different programs during this cycle, 2 FEMA programs, BRIC and flood mitigation assistance. And so we'll be helping you put in applications for those programs. The RAISE program, which has been extremely popular. And I just want to say, for all of you who've applied for RAISE before and haven't gotten it, keep going for it, because we know that it's often the case that it takes sometimes the 3rd or 4th cycle to win a RAISE grant. And then we have one for elective pay. This is ways to get back some of the funds that you may have used this year to buy an electric vehicle for your fleet, or to put in solar panels. So if you have done something, this year that it qualifies for a tax credit, we're going to help you make sure you get your money back. So please check out the bootcamp offerings in the link that I posted. And then on a slightly related topic, we want to make sure that every city, is spending its ARPA funds. You got your state and local fiscal recovery funds. We want to show the federal government that when you give local governments money, they use it well. And so to that end, we're partnering with the Treasury Department to have another session focused specifically on workforce development. How do you put those funds for use towards workforce development? If you have unobligated funds, what are some of the ways that in the next less than 6 months that you have to obligate your funds, you can get that money out the door? And so please register for that session. And then we'll be coming back to you shortly with some other opportunities on the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant. We want to make sure every city that's eligible has submitted an application for EECBG funding. And then starting to think about those greenhouse gas reduction funds that we know are going to be becoming available in the next couple of months. How can cities start aligning around those? So while I know we'd love to all take a break for summer, the federal funding is rolling out. There's a huge pot of money available, and we want to make sure your cities get it. And so with that, I want to thank the Assistant Secretary, thank Angie, Amy, Rachel, Rebecca, and all the team for putting today together. And as always, thank our fantastic partners without whom we couldn't do this work. And I hope that you all have a great week.